Welcome to Community Conversations. I'm your host, Doris Ballard. This program is available on Concord TV, channel 22, on demand at yourconcordtv.org, on our YouTube channel, as well as on iTunes as a free podcast. My guests today are Ellen Grow, Director of the Concord Coalition to End Homelessness, and Ellen Fries, who is the organization's board chair. Hello, Ellens. How are you?
Hi, Doris.
So, Ellen Fries, I want to make sure that I identify which one you are. So,
Yes.
Welcome, Ellen Fries.
Thank you.
And welcome, Ellen Grow.
Thank you.
All right. So, why don't we? There's so much to talk about when we had a little time before the program started. Let's just begin right away with what exactly is the Concord Coalition to End Homelessness, which is the acronym CCEH.
Yes.
Correct? Okay, we'll start with our board chair. Is this the right person to start, Ellen? Yeah, okay.
Sure.
A little history.
I would say we began in 2008. The cold weather shelters in First and South Churches had begun, and the people running those shelters were seeing some gaps in services and some needs that people had a place to sleep at night, but no way to access services during the day, or no direction. So the Homeless Coalition was begun, and the first action was to hire someone part-time to be a resource center director, so that during the day those people could go somewhere. And
So it started because there was a need that
Yes.
was seen with the cold winter shelters.
Exactly.
And how did you start? Are you the first board chair?
no, I'm not the first board chair, but I have been involved from the inception
Okay.
of the group, because I was volunteering in the shelters at that time.
There were quite a few people volunteering in this from this community. That
Yes.
I mean, they stayed overnight,
Yes.
and so we'll talk in great detail about the cold weather shelter numbers and why it's not happening now, and what's going to be happening about finding affordable housing for those people and that's really the issue, isn't it? I mean, it's fine to give them shelter in the winter, and we will talk about those warming centers. However, that doesn't solve the problem of finding them permanent housing.
That's
Right.
correct.
All right. Well, the mission, if you could say in a nutshell, Ellen Grow, what is the mission of the Concord Coalition to End Homelessness?
I would say I should have our mission statement memorized, but I don't. But it's basically to address the underlying causes of homelessness and find solutions for the underlying causes of homelessness in the greater Concord area.
Now, that's a big challenge.
It is.
Very
It's
big
huge.
challenge. So, I mean, where do you even begin? Let's start with what's happening at the city level.
Right, so maybe for sort of an overview, I've been there almost 2 years now, coming up in February, 2 years, and just as I was being hired, the city was completing a process of writing a plan to end homelessness. They had appointed a task force to do that, and they were just finishing that up, and just after I was hired, they adopted that plan to end homelessness. And CCEH is now the lead agency that is bringing together all of the groups to implement that plan. So it's not just a piece of paper on the shelf, so that something actually comes of it. So that's been our main focus, is try to put some wheels on the plan.
So this is since 2008?
No,
This is more recent.
well, this is 2 years
Right,
ago.
2 years ago.
Yes, coming
and-
up on
right,
2 years
but
ago.
because of what was happening that was noticed during the cold winter shelters.
And the organization researched solutions to homelessness and what was going on in other parts of the country, and we began encouraging the city leaders to have a plan to end homelessness years ago. We've been encouraging and suggesting that it would be really helpful to us and other organizations working together to have the support of the city behind what we're doing. It's really
Absolutely.
vital.
Well,
Right.
how does it benefit to have the city be involved?
It's been huge, and it's broader than just the city. Although they were pushing this forward as well, which was great. The plan calls for this steering committee, this executive level steering committee that's not just people who typically deal with homelessness. It's a broad base. We have people from the business community, people from the faith community, people from all different aspects of community life serve on that steering committee, and they were chosen for their commitment and dedication to Concord and their influence that they carry in the community to make things happen. So we have business leaders. We have Steve Dupree is on the committee. Faith leaders, the Bishop Hirschfeld is on the committee.
Concord
Hospital, Pamela Puleo. So there's, I think, 14 members on the committee right now. And their role is advisory and to kind of open doors and make connections. So we sort of bring them, here's the proven strategies, here's what we've learned from what's working in other communities, here's what we want to try and make happen in Concord, and they say, yes, that'll fly, or no, that's a crazy idea, or somewhere in the middle, and here's who we should bring together to make that happen. So they've been a huge asset having that steering committee in place.
What have you learned since the steering committee has begun? I mean, because now you're connecting because of that steering committee and the Plan to End Homelessness initiative. What have you learned that you didn't know of?
Well,
that may have surprised you.
Well, I was new to homelessness when I took this job. I will say I've worked in poverty issues my entire career, but I never had focused specifically on homelessness. I had worked as a legal services attorney and I'd worked in affordable housing development, but I'd never focused on homelessness as a specific issue. So I was wonderfully surprised to see that other communities are actually making a huge dent and ending homelessness for some of the most vulnerable long-term homeless individuals through this housing first model. So that's what our steering committee said, you should focus on one thing. This is a broad plan, and if you try to do a little bit in all of the areas, you'll have nothing to show for it at the end of the day. You need to focus on one thing and make something happen. And so we said, let's focus on housing first. That is what's working in other parts of the country. That's what the federal government is really pushing, so it aligned with where the money is coming from in the federal level. And the idea is that you focus on the most difficult to house, chronically homeless people who have some kind of underlying mental health issue or substance addiction, and you provide caseworker support and a rental subsidy and put the person immediately into their own apartment and provide the support from the stability of their own apartment rather than trying to help someone while they're still in the shelter where it's kind of chaotic and it can be hard to focus, hard to get a grip on your underlying issues in that situation.
And some people who are home, I'm sorry, go ahead, Ellen.
I was just going to say it's a very different approach from what's been going on for many years, which is focusing on the people who are perhaps the easiest to deal with, because it's easier to get people into housing if they've just kind of fallen out briefly. But it was discovered that those who've been chronically homeless for a long time and are really struggling are using all the resources, and that these other people who are going to have an easier time solving their own problem only need a little bit of help.
So there's different types of people. Let's talk about them. I'm not sure how the public and people in Concord understand what makes a person homeless. It can be as simple as someone having, an illness that pops up. I mean, that drains your resources and you lose your home or your apartment. I mean, let's talk about the types of people that are homeless and those that are probably chronic versus those that you can give a little help, hand up, and get them taken care of. Talk about that.
I think our whole economic system is really a struggle on a lot of people. If you're born into poverty, it can be really hard to break that cycle, and we don't have a living wage that's available to many people who aren't highly educated. So the whole economic system feeds into the fact that some people are living on the edge. So those folks, if one missed car payment, one
paycheck away from probably
one medical incident or a breakdown of your car and you can't get to work and you lose your job. All those things could lead to typically what is short-term homelessness, and they are usually able to get back on their feet in a couple of months. Might need some assistance, some rental assistance or other support for a short period of time until they're stable again, but still living on the edge, still, you know, still kind of one paycheck away again, which is not a great place to be. The other population that we talk about is chronically homeless, which is typically has some kind of mental illness or substance abuse issue going on. And those people tend to be homeless for a long time, or in and out of homelessness repeatedly for a long time.
And you're getting into a whole other discussion for another show here, which is having places for rehabilitation and the shortage of those types of resources.
Right, which is very much in the news right now.
Right. And as I said, that's going to be a lot of other shows in the future. But it all works.
It's totally connected. Absolutely interwoven.
If you're just tuning in, this is Community Conversations. I'm Doris Ballard, your host, and this program is available on Concord TV Channel 22 and on demand on yourconcordtv.org. And also, we are a free podcast. You can go to YouTube, our YouTube channel, as well as on iTunes. And we're talking with Ellen Grow and Ellen Fries. Ellen Grow is the director of the Concord Coalition to End Homelessness, and Ellen Fries acts as its wonderful board chair, leading the very generous volunteers who are part of this organization, which I do want to talk about volunteers and how I'm sure you can't, like any organization, you need good volunteers in many areas. So we're going to do a pitch for that and a pitch for things you may need for resources as well. All right, now, no cold weather shelters are open right now.
Correct.
You have some good news, however. You have a warming center.
We're working on
it. So let's see, what is a warming center? And how do you see that helping?
Yeah, and maybe we'll back up a little bit. You know, the two churches, as Ellen said earlier, have run cold weather shelters for the past, I think it's 11 years.
That's a long. I didn't realize it was that long.
Yeah, it's quite a long time. And they let everyone know last summer and last fall that, or maybe it was even the spring for South Church, and then in the fall for First Church, that last winter was going to be their last winter. That they, I think you'd have to. There's probably many reasons, and you would rather let them speak for themselves, but I think they were worn out. I think it was a lot of work, and their buildings were taking a lot of wear and tear, and they felt possibly that with the adoption of the plan to end homelessness, and there was a lot of momentum, that this was a good time to say, we can't shoulder this ourselves any longer. The community needs to come up with a response. So since last spring and summer, the coalition was going around to every agency that we could think of and every faith community that we could think of to see if someone could host what we were picturing as a much smaller overflow winter shelter, whether they could provide the site for it or manage it. We were kind of separating those two duties. Could anybody do either of those two things, and we'll match things up. And we were just met with everyone saying, no, we don't have the capacity to do that. So we kind of shifted gears and said, well, that doesn't, we're hitting a dead end. No one seems able to do this. So let's put some other pieces at work that we already wanted to have at work anyway. One is what they call in the field shelter diversion, which is really putting the time and the energy with a caseworker into problem solving with someone who comes to you and says, I need a shelter tonight, rather than looking first to see, well, what shelter has some space, spending time saying, what other options can we possibly find for you so that shelter is your absolute last resort. So the city gave the Resource Center some money to extend our hours this winter. So we're now open 9 to 5 instead of 9 to 1.
And that is on 238 North Main Street.
Correct. Right. And our Resource Center is a place where people who are experiencing homelessness can get immediate assistance with limited food and clothing, and mostly seeing a caseworker to help access resources, all different kinds of resources that they might be eligible for. And with this winter, really that focused work on where can you go tonight within your own network, and could we provide some utility money so that you could stay with your Aunt Mary for the winter, that sort of thing.
Now, are you able to help anyone find a place for a night? I mean, with what's available out there?
Well, yeah.
I mean,
for the most part, I mean, or...
Well, and we're with the diversion, you're really trying to tap into that person's circle of friends and family.
So is there any place you can go, as you said, maybe something could be provided to encourage a family member or friend?
Possible. Right.
So it's really getting to know each person's different.
Yes.
Absolutely. Each story is
Is quite
It
unique.
really is. It really is. There's no one situation. Every person is very unique in the struggles that they're facing and the possibilities that might be there for them.
How do you go
And
ahead,
sometimes
Ellen.
when someone finds out that there is no shelter right in Concord in that moment, they will say, well, maybe I could do, maybe my uncle will let me stay with him if I do this, or I'm in a fight with this person, and the caseworker could say, well, maybe I can mediate between you, or
So
maybe
you
you
do
can get
have-
some help with utility bill or
You
something
do have
like that.
caseworkers.
Yes,
we do.
Yes, we do.
But this is not a one organization answer. I mean, the Concord
No.
Coalition and Homelessness cannot be alone doing this. So
No, not at all. And I will
Yeah.
say city welfare does the same thing with
Right.
people. And if somebody is, truly impoverished, they can qualify for a hotel room from the city. But the city wants to make sure that you're spending whatever income you have towards housing, and
Right.
that they'll work very closely with people to make sure that money's not going off into luxury items. They're
Right.
not. They have to be very careful with
like
that money.
cigarettes, alcohol. I mean, but how do you deal with even the simple need for cigarettes? I mean, they're addicted to those cigarettes. A lot
Sure.
of people,
Right.
and so, I mean, it's just so intricate.
It is. It is.
You are right.
It is intricate.
I don't know, but but
Right.
we're doing something about it. You're
Yeah,
doing something.
we are,
about it.
and I will say there are in Concord. Many people I think don't realize there are 3 different shelters in Concord currently.
All right.
There's the Salvation Army McKenna House, which
Right.
serves individuals, male and female,
And they are expanding.
and
some,
they are
right.
expanding. They were 24 beds, and they're going up by 16 beds. And we had all hoped that they would have that expansion done by winter, by the end of this month. But there's been delays. This is common in the construction
Right, right.
industry.
That goes.
So now families, when they
Families, there's 2 different shelters. One is the Friends Emergency Program, and I think they can house about 8 families at a time, depending on how many people are in each family. And then Family Promise has just started up, and Family Promise is a faith-based model where there's, I think, 12 different churches involved, and it's Greater Concord, so there's Hopkinton churches and outlying towns. And the families spend a week at each church. So they move, they sleep in the church, and they move each week, and they go to a day resource center that is just for the Family Promise folks,
Wow.
separate from our
Yeah.
resource center.
So those who are watching or listening here, this is Community Conversations. I'm Doris Ballard, your host. We're talking about Concord Coalition to End Homelessness. There's so much to talk about. But I do want to get to Ellen Grow and Ellen Fries of the board. And Ellen Grow is the director of CCEH.
Yes.
And by the way, concordhomeless.org
Yes.
is your website.
That's
so we
correct.
want to, I'll repeat that again, concordhomeless.org. People want to go, maybe make a donation. And
Sure.
it's a good time
Yes.
to ask
Yes.
right now.
Yes,
There's a great
we're in
need,
the middle
greater
of our
need.
annual appeal.
There
so
you
that
go,
would be great.
concordhomeless.org. And if you want to help in any way, now you are not faith-based, right?
We are not.
That's the coalition. And your resource center, now with the time we have left, I'd like to talk about your resource center.
Okay.
So what did people do before the resource center came about? Obviously, there was a great need for this.
Yes.
They would just talk to people
Word of
and
mouth, find
Right.
out. But one of the great challenges, I think, for people who find themselves in need of whatever resources exist in a community is that you might go to a church and ask for help, and they might send you to the welfare office, which is on the other side of town, who might send you to a state office. All these things are very spread out, and it's hard to determine exactly what you need as an individual
even
and what you
imagine
qualify for.
walking to all these different
Right.
locations if you don't have a vehicle.
So a resource center can pull together all that
Sure.
information so that an individual can go in, meet with a caseworker, and find out, well, you might qualify, it looks as though you qualify for this. So we can help you fill out the papers to go to this place and get that kind of assistance.
So let's talk a little bit about what you offer at the resource center. But first, you have 2 part-time employees,
We have 2 part-time caseworkers.
caseworkers, and a part-time resource center
Program director.
director, and of course,
and me.
Executive Director.
And then we have our brand new, or pretty new, is our full-time, our one full-time person is our housing stability specialist. And she's the one who's working with our new Housing First program.
To try to get people
Yes, to work with
find a home.
Yeah, so I would say the resource center case managers work with whoever walks in the door, and the person might walk in the door and get some help and leave, and we never see them again. They might come back repeatedly for weeks or months and continue to seek help, or just get their mail at the resource center. So that's sort of the resource center piece of the work. The full-time housing stability specialist will have a smaller caseload, but she will be sticking with those individuals, helping them find housing and stay in it. And these would be the most vulnerable people who probably have mental health issues or substance abuse issues,
Or
and
both.
or both. And she's helping them navigate back to functioning in society as they're ready. There's no rules about you have to do X, Y, and Z. It's just you have to not disturb your neighbors. You have to follow the regular rules of a lease. And you have the support of this caseworker to help you do that.
All right. Great work that you do. I mean, serving on the board. How many board members do you have, Ellen?
We currently have 12 board members.
So, and they are all involved in one way or another, I'm sure.
They are very
And
involved
passionate about
board,
your mission.
very hardworking on the ground board.
That's
yes.
great. I'm thinking now of, as a taxpayer in Concord, I'm thinking of the money you are saving this city in combining all the resources. If you think about it, it's more efficient.
Yes.
Well,
Right?
we're trying. We're
Right.
trying to
We're
make it more
trying.
efficient for the clients.
Okay.
And I don't know if we're running out of time. Are we running out
No,
of time?
we're
Okay,
good. We're good.
Because we want to get to the warming center for sure.
The warming center. All right, let's talk about that, and then let's talk about some of the things you help with and what you need.
Okay,
How's that?
great.
Okay, so the
great.
warming center.
Yeah, so the warming centers, people may have read newspaper articles about it at this point. So we, like we said, starting in the spring, we tried to find an agency that could either host or manage a cold weather shelter, and no one felt they had the capacity to do that, and no location was surfacing. So we started to look for, well, where's the place of last resort that we can tell people as we're closing the door, where do you go? If there's no place to go, that you're not going to freeze, and started seeking out public places to see could they serve that capacity, the police station, the fire station, the hospital. They all said, we are not set up for that. We're not set up for you to be sending people to just come and stay warm here. So we said, well, then we need to find a place that can serve as that. And just as we're, realizing that we need this final safety net, the city cleared the way for the top floor of the building that we are in, that's owned by Tom Fredenberg, to serve as some sort of winter solution. And so it turned out that it could be used either as a 16-bed shelter, but it would have to have overnight staff awake because
So you
it
can
doesn't.
still use it as an overnight shelter.
Well, but here's what the problem was. We feel like if we said there's a 16-bed shelter, what do you do with the 17th person who shows up?
Right.
And I think because people are used to a 60-bed shelter, which was run, people won't hear 16, they'll hear shelter. And people, with the cold weather shelters, I think 190 people passed through those 60 beds last winter.
unbelievable.
Over the course of the winter.
Over the course
yeah.
of the winter,
Still.
and 2/3 of them were not from Concord. 2/3 of them came from other places. So we're trying to get the word out to the other cities.
Which is a whole
please.
other discussion about what other cities doing.
It is,
Right, and is there a collaboration there?
And they're, we're all working on it. Everybody's trying their best.
But they'll gravitate to where there's shelter,
Right.
obviously.
So
Right.
we felt, given the unpredictability of how many people really had could not be diverted, could just, with no safety net of their own, given that that's such an unpredictable number and the 17th.
It just doesn't make sense.
It did that a warming center, which they've used in cities like Portland, Maine, where unfortunately you are sitting up in a chair or at a table or on a couch. It's certainly not comfortable, but it was a way to ensure that no one had to be out in the cold, that there was room for whoever needed it, that
Right.
the final safety net existed. So that's what we were advocating for. And then the city cleared the use for the space. We still didn't have anyone to run it because our organization didn't have the capacity either. So we pulled together a big meeting, and that's what that newspaper article was about.
Right,
We called together
right.
40 different providers and leaders in the city.
So if we can direct people to find that newspaper article on, I think it was
the Friday.
yeah.
I
If they
thanks.
Google
Yeah.
Concord Homeless Coalition to End Homelessness story, you can find it.
Yes.
I found it very easily.
Or go to the
Yes.
Concord
Yeah.
Monitor.
So
and I think they're going
should
to be
be
writing
available.
another
Can be
story
there.
this weekend.
Wonderful.
With an update,
So stay in touch with it. Now,
Yeah.
ConcordHomeless.org. But the Resource Center, I looked at everything you offer. It's amazing. Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, the SNAP program.
We help people
Little
apply
bit.
for that.
Right.
So
But so you're a connector.
Right.
That's
Right.
the idea.
You
Right.
connect veterans with assistance.
Yes.
Yep, we have
Yeah.
a lot of providers now in our bigger space. So come to us and see
Right.
people from our place. So the clients show up and the VA comes every
So that's
week.
a very good example of how it starts with you, and then you can
Right.
with the coalition. Connect with mental health services,
Yep, they
applying
come
for
once a week.
supportive or
Elizabeth
subsidized
comes.
housing. I mean, I wouldn't even know where to begin
Right.
if I were in their situation. Even free monthly haircuts from the New England School
Yes.
of Barbering,
Yeah.
just
They're
to be
wonderful.
able to. I
And we
am
now, because of our larger space, we're now able to offer showers.
Yep.
We have computers people can use. A lot of people do job searches or apartment searches with our computers.
We have a washer and
We have a
dryer
washer,
now for the
dryer.
guests.
Oh my gosh, can you imagine?
So clean clothes and a
Right.
shower
Really.
and a haircut.
Right.
And coffee,
basics.
snacks.
Yes.
Yep.
And volunteers.
Gotta have coffee.
Yeah. yeah. And just volunteers who are there to listen.
Yes,
They
exactly.
are. They are.
Yeah. What is it? We're almost out of town. Small successes, I'm sure, are what bolster your energy to keep going.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
So, I mean, how do you
well-
not get, how do you keep
Well-
your positive attitudes?
We have had several people move into housing. I think 10 or 11 in this past calendar year
That's
since
wonderful.
January.
And these were
Wonderful.
long-term
homeless
people.
That's
people.
great. Right.
So that's wonderful.
How
Yeah.
can the public who may be listening or watching help the Concord Coalition to End Homelessness, CCEH?
Well, one thing that we really are in need of is landlords willing to work with us, whether that's with permanent year-long leases for our Housing First program, or for this winter, we are trying to help some of the most vulnerable people at least have apartments through the winter with the caseworker support. And we have some limited funding. We have an anonymous donor who put up $5,000 to help people
Wonderful.
get through the winter,
Wonderful.
particularly if they had something that might be starting in the spring. There's several people on the waiting list for Concord Housing and Redevelopment public housing, but it may not happen this winter. So to sort of bridge that time, but we need landlords. So we need
All right.
landlords and apartments. And as we said before, we're doing our annual appeal, so just to keep our own doors open, we need to raise funds for that.
ConcordHomeless.org, because you do get some funding from the state and from generous businesses in the
Yes,
We do,
community,
do.
right?
we do.
But this takes a lot more than, you could really certainly use more, I'm
We
sure. right?
absolutely.
It takes
absolutely.
everyone.
It takes everyone, it takes a village up here.
does.
It
Right, right, right.
does. It does.
All right, well, I want to thank you both, Ellen Fries, Board Chair of the Concord Coalition to End Homelessness, and Ellen Grow, the
Thank
Executive
you.
Director. Thank you so much for being on
Thank you
Community
for having us.
Conversations anytime.
Thank
Keep
you.
up the wonderful work that you're doing. And those who may be watching or listening, please, again, ConcordHomeless.org if you would like to make a donation or maybe find a volunteer or find out what items you might need. But cash is always the best. I mean, you can get what you
Right.
really need.
Right.
All right. So thank you both very, very much for being on Community
right.
Conversations.
Thank you.
Thanks
And
for having us.
best of luck. Keep it up. All right.
you.
Thank you
Great.
for tuning in. This is Community Conversations. I'm Doris Ballard, your host.